Hello everyone and welcome to the first game we'll be covering from the semi-final match. This is game 1 of the semi-final match of the Freestyle Grand Slam Paris tournament, Fabiano Caruana versus Magnus Carlsen. And it's such a high-level game that you'd think that it's actually a classical game where both players know their preparation 20 moves deep. But it's not. These guys are just that good. And okay, we could also say that these two are the two of the greatest classical players in the world. We all know they played the World Chess Championship match in 2018 in London. So yeah, I mean, incredible players, but still it amazes me that they're able to pull this off at this level without engine preparation. So that, I mean, that is just You'll see what I mean by this. And also a bit of a fun fact or a vast knowledge increaser, if you will. Not sure how many of you knew this. Fabiano's middle name is Luigi. I actually did not know this. I have no idea how. I mean, I've been doing this for almost 10 years, and I've never actually heard Fabiano's middle name. But also another fun fact, if you guys don't know, Magnus's middle name is actually Magnus. His name is Sven. But he goes by his middle name, you know, when representing himself to the world, basically. So, okay, some fun facts before we check out the game. So let's check it out. You guys will be amazed by this one. Fabi opens with pawn to c4, the freestyle English, opening up the queen and the light square bishop. This is something that we've already... well, we're already accustomed to this, as pretty much every game that is how players open up. Knight to g6. Okay, the knight is definitely being developed to g6, so you might as well do it now. You gain control of the center, and also you are already prepared to castle. We have knight to g3. Fabi does the same, and pawn to c5. We have knight to b3. Attacking the c5 pawn, and already we get some action with bishop to e5, and these are all top engine moves. Going after the b2 pawn, Fabi plays bishop captures knight on g6. Magnus recaptures. This ruins Magnus's pawn structure a little bit, but then again, maybe he uses the h file to attack the white king. Maybe he also castles. Hard to say. Knight captures on c5. Bishop captures on b2. We have rook b1 and bishop to d4. Sort of forcing white to capture on b7. You could go back with knight b3, but Fabi boldly captures on b7. And now look at this. Queen c7 attacks the knight, d3, and the bishop back to b6. And Fabi's knight is trapped. You cannot go to a5. It's defended twice. Cannot go to c5, d6. But there is a4 and c5. So if the queen ever captures, it's going right in front of that rook, and you will be able to recapture it with c5 or a4, a5. So that's why pawn to a4 by Fabi and the d5 by Magnus. Okay, pawn to c5. Now Magnus has to capture. You don't really have to capture. You could also wait for captures and then capture, but it also makes sense to capture right away. Pawn to a5 and queen to c6. Now you have to capture the bishop. A captures on b6. A captures and c captures. We have knight captures and now castles kingside. Knight to a4 going after knight to c3, and Fabi basically forces it. Bishop to b4, and if you don't want this bishop controlling this diagonal, also putting pressure on the d7 pawn, which means that you cannot castle, you have to go for knight c3. Knight c3 and bishop captures. Rook c1 doesn't really work because after rook captures, bishop also captures the rook, so white would end up down the exchange. So bishop captures on c3, queen captures, and now queen to c1, and we have a queen trade. Captures and rook f captures on c1. So they've spent almost the exact amount of time getting to this position. Look at this, 46-55, 46-37, and the position is roughly equal. Fabi's position may be a little bit better as he has the intact pawn structure. Magnus has a doubled pawn, but bishop versus a knight, okay, it's not that it's an open board, but it's not that the game is being played on both sides of the board, so it's hard to say if the bishop actually has any advantage over the knight here. Most likely it is the knight that has the advantage here. So okay, castles kingside by Magnus and pawn to f4. We have pawn to e6, putting his pawns on light squares, which is not something you want to do as you have a light square bishop, but by playing pawn to f4, Fabi made sure that the otherwise is impossible. We have king f2, bishop to a4, and now knight to f1, getting the knight to e3, and then hopefully maybe somehow the knight ends up on e5. That would be a great square for the knight, or maybe d4. We'll see what Fabi plays. We have rook f to c8, knight to d2, and the rook captures on c1. Rook captures and bishop back to e8. And the bishop looks kind of passive here, but it's actually very, very important to have this bishop here guarding the f7 pawn, and also to guard against any future passers. If you get maybe g4, h4, h5, and then you will be able to capture, and the bishop gains, has more control over that square. So, okay, bishop e8, knight to f3, and rook to a7. Magnus allows Fabi to gain control over the back rank, rook c8, king to f8, and the knight to d4. We have king e7 and rook to b8. Now, rook to c7 and king to e3. We have rook to a7 and pawn to g4. Now, Fabi will gain as much space as possible on the king side before deciding on any rash moves. We have rook back to c7. Magnus, without a plan here, he can just wait and repeat. The bishop can never move from e8. Rook to g8 would be a problem for Magnus. So he's basically checking if Fabi is ready to call it a day, or will Fabi push for more. And Fabi, okay, Fabi wants more. g5. You only get the white pieces once, so we might as well make the most of it. Okay, not really true if both classical games are drawn. Okay, you go into tiebreaks, you get more white pieces, but you know what I mean. Rook to a7, Magnus again repeating, pawn to h4, and Magnus rook to c7. He's saying, okay, are we really doing this? And Fabi says, yes, we are really doing this. King to f2, we have rook to a7, and king to f3. We have rook back to c7, Magnus just playing that rook a7, rook c7 maneuver, king e3, rook to a7, we have knight to b3, and rook to c7. Rook to a8, taking away the a7 square from the rook, and now rook b7 attacks the knight, knight to c5. And this is actually a very, very deep move by Fabi. He's trying to trick Magnus into going rook c7, because why wouldn't you? It seems like you're chasing away the knight, but the problem is if you play rook c7, king d4 is not winning for white, but it would be very, very difficult to hold this for black. Just to give you an example, let's say you try something like pawn to f6. All of a sudden, knight captures on e6, and that's it. You lose a pawn, and it's game over. Captures, captures, and you will also lose the d5 pawn at some point, and then you're going to be down 2 pawns, and you're going to lose the game. So, while not losing immediately, it will be Magnus will have to burn so much time in order to hold this position. So Magnus just plays rook to b1. Rook to b5 is also fine. Magnus goes rook b1. Rook to a7 with check. King d6 attacks the knight, and d4 now. Not as potent as king to d4, as how are you getting your king into the game now? But okay, you have to play something. Rook h1, Fabi even sacrifices the h4 pawn, knight to d3, and rook to h3 check. King f2, and now rook captures on h4, gaining a little bit of activity before capturing. Pawn to e3, and rook to h2 with check. We have king to g3. Rook to c2, and now knight to e5. Again, putting pressure on that f7 pawn, so you can't really move the bishop, but also you can't really bring the king to help out, so you have to offer a rook trade. And now Fabi decides to go for it. Rook captures, king to f3, and king to d6. We have pawn to e4. Fabi breaks through the center. Pawn to f6, we have knight to d3, and d captures. With check, king captures, bishop to a4, and now king captures, king to e3 and bishop to c2, attacking the knight, and knight to c5, for the moment keeping the minor pieces in the game. F captures on g5, we have f captures and pawn to e5, trying to undermine the knight here. Knight to a6 and bishop to b1. We have d captures, king captures, and now knight to c7, and you get this position where okay, Magnus is up a pawn, but it's a double g pawn, so of course you're not gonna be able to do anything about it. Bishop a2, knight b5, king to f5, we have king f3, king captures on g5, even winning the pawn. Now Magnus is up 2 pawns, but it's a double g pawn. There is no way to promote this. A few more moves were played, and very quickly after that, we have this knight to g4 check. Pieces got traded off. g5, Magnus gave up all of the pawns, and we have the best kind of draw, a draw by insufficient material. So yeah, really, really incredible stuff. I'm very much looking forward to see what Magnus will be able to pull off with the white pieces here, because this was played to perfection by both white and black. There were no misses here. There were no, missed chances. Nothing So we'll see if Magnus will be able to do something with white, or will this be going into tie breaks. Yeah, incredible stuff by Fabi. Is no longer world number 2. He's now world number 5. But you know, in classical, I would say that, you know, it's hard not to think of him as the world number 2, being you know, playing having played the World Championship match. But okay, Gukesh is the world champion, and you know, times are changing. So that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Peter Van Dulst, Derek King, Charles Benjamin, Flynn, Dan Schwartz, and Ilya Maltsev for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.